Tonight, the firefighters on the front lines recounting the moments before a massive wildfire moved into Jasper. Emotional stories from those who fought the flames.
It's devastating for the Jasper and us.
Plus, a new perspective of the damage as media tour the town site.
Every structure fire in the town site is contained and under control and actually extinguished.
Canada's women's soccer team takes to the pitch under a dark cloud.
I think we've lost our image. If they win all the games, they have lost the Olympics.
The head coach speaks out as the federal government pulls back funding. And the Olympic venue vying for a win as swim practice in the Seine is cancelled over contamination.
We are still very confident the water quality will improve.
Also, the fishermen strumming a song of survival. A gift from the Premier after the Lucky Seven were saved from the sea.
I said, Katie, I said, Dad is on for good.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We are getting a new look tonight at the devastation in Jasper. And for the first time, hearing from the people who stayed behind to try to save their town. Many lost their own homes while trying to work to protect critical infrastructure and give the community a chance to rebuild. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson reports.
This was a bike shop, a restaurant, and a liquor store. Over here, the gas station. And there stood a church. That's the way it is on the west side of Jasper after a firefight for the ages.
No matter what we did, we had all the resources we could use. We just couldn't use them on this. Nothing was effective.
Media were escorted into town today to get a sense of the damage and the heroic efforts of firefighters, many of whom lost their own homes. Fire Chief Matthew Conti saw his house catching fire and couldn't do anything about it as he led the struggle to save his community.
It was unfortunate. Yeah, I did lose my own home in that and did notice that when I was out on my patrols. It was pretty overwhelming, but at the same time, there was a lot going on. My daughter probably took it the worst. Obviously, it's belongings, right? All her little mementos and everything she's collected over the years, so she's pretty devastated that she lost a lot of her stuff.
Many trees around town are snapped in half from estimated 100-kilometer-per-hour winds that drove the inferno into Jasper.
They could start hearing trees popping on the streets. All the furniture that's in the little patios areas was being blown onto the roads.
The effort to save critical infrastructure was a success, but it was close. The fire hall, hospital, and a school are only a few hundred meters from the destruction.
Those are very critical infrastructures that if we lost, it would have been years to be able to be rebuilt and allow residents back into the town.
A small wildfire is still being worked on outside of town. The much larger fire that destroyed 1/3 of Jasper is farther out, but it's still out of control. The national park remains closed. There is more wildlife than people. And there is no timeline for the thousands who evacuated to return. Some may choose not to.
Of course it makes me sad. I hope people choose to stay and rebuild in Jasper and be part of what the reconstruction of our community is going to look like, but I also understand that for some people it might be too much.
Losing 30% of a town to wildfire is an incredible hit. But the firefighters and leaders of Jasper we spoke to today also see successfully saving 70% of their community as a hard-fought win, especially key infrastructure that will allow a return to regular life sooner than later. Heather.
Focusing on the positives during a difficult time. Andrew, thanks. There is much heartbreak for the hundreds of firefighters working day and night. CTV's Kathy Lee spent time with them on break in Hinton, Alberta, to capture their stories from the front lines.
The job is difficult and dangerous, but a calling for firefighters to jump on the front lines of wildfires.
We were all itching to get in there to help. We were just, everybody wanted to go.
A fire like this is much bigger than just ourselves. So it's really satisfying for us to be able to help.
The Hinton Fire Department doing their part. Now some are taking a much-needed break. Jenna Sitar returning to Jasper, this time leading a team. Images of destruction hard to put into words.
It was quite raw that, you know, you see Jasper born and raised Hinton, so.
Hinton and Jasper are sister towns. Sitar and her team are among the more than 100 structural firefighters on the ground. Their efforts saving the majority of the town, including Merv and Lori L. Bashforth's home, theirs on the edge of fire.
As a resident, I am just, I can't express how grateful I am and thankful for the work that they've done. I mean, God bless them.
I'm past the panic and the adrenaline rush. And now got to work towards the planning stage.
The next stage for firefighters, monitoring for hotspots. Sitar will contribute for as long as she's needed because fire can burn for months in the ground.
It can burn for kilometers underneath the soil and you wouldn't even detect it until a little opening or a hole shows up. The wind will come up and get into those crevices and then that fire can flare up again.
The fire chief with the municipality of Jasper says not only are firefighters monitoring for hotspots in town, they're also working with Parks Canada and Alberta Wildfire to create a barrier around the town to protect it. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Jasper, Alberta.
More unwanted attention for Canada's women's soccer team as the fallout from the drone spying scandal continues to unravel. Today, another distraction for players trying to revive hope against their toughest opponent yet, France. CTV's Kamal Karamali has been following this story for us. Kamal, these are must-win games for the team.
Heather, what a frantic finish it was. Canada defeating France 2-1 with only a couple of minutes left in the match. Now, Canada has to pretty much win every game in this group stage since FIFA, soccer's governing body, docked the team 6 points yesterday. So even though they won against New Zealand earlier and now France, they still have 0 points because they started the tournament with -6 points, making it difficult to advance to the next round, but not impossible. But if that wasn't enough, today our own country penalizing the team, the federal government saying they're withholding some of Canada Soccer's funding for the duration of their FIFA sanctions. Canada's sports minister says it's yet to be determined how much should be withheld, but that using a drone to surveil another team during a closed practice is cheating. It is completely unfair to Canadian players and to opposing teams. It undermines the integrity of the game itself. Meanwhile, the team's head coach, who has been banned, spoke on the issue today. I am absolutely heartbroken for the players, and I would like to apologize from the bottom of my heart. I want to take accountability, and I plan to fully cooperate with the investigation.
They're losing no matter what. Even if they win on the pitch, they have lost. They have lost the Olympics. They have lost the respect of people as a team. I'm not talking to players, but as a team, as a country, I think we've lost our image.
Now the Canadian women's soccer team with the glimmer of hope to advance to the next round with a match against Colombia on Wednesday. Heather.
All right, Kamal, thank you. A Canadian fencer made history for this country on day 2 of Olympic competition. Eleanor Harvey won bronze in the women's foil individual event to claim Canada's first ever Olympic fencing medal. Canada's tally in Paris sits at 2 medals. And one Olympic venue is still vying for victory. The IOC and World Triathlon canceled a practice swim today because of pollution in Paris. It was meant to help athletes familiarize themselves with the River Seine, but tests showed high levels of contamination, unsafe for swimmers. CTV's Jean-Pierre Boschman reports from Paris.
Skies finally cleared over the City of Lights, but after 2 days of Paris rain that flushed E. coli into the River Seine, officials canceled the practice swim for the triathlon. It's a setback. Years and nearly $2 billion have been invested in decontaminating the river, where pollution has made it illegal to swim for 100 years.
We are still very confident that with the weather forecast for the next 48 hours, the water quality will improve.
In time for what could be a historic triathlon swim in the Seine scheduled for Tuesday. Paris 2024 organizers have long banked on the Seine and historic landmarks, not just as backdrops, but to be part of the Games. Take, for instance, Place de la Concorde, where Marie Antoinette was guillotined. It will host breakdancing, Newcomer to the Games meet a venue more than 250 years old. The marathon course is set to follow in the footsteps of a historic march of the French Revolution from City Hall to Versailles.
Coming back to the Eiffel Tower is going to be lit up, I was told, and then coming back along the Seine, I'm so much looking forward to.
Itapani is among 20,000 runners from around the world who won a spot in a first-of-its-kind mass participation marathon. It will take place on the same course right after the athletes finish the race. Kit lives in Ottawa. In her home are the medals for the 16 marathons she's already completed.
How old are you? I'm 65. I'm proudly saying it. So there you go. You know, it's cool. It's cool at this age to be able to do something like this. It's not just any marathon.
Look at that site. Not bad. Not bad.
We caught up with her in Paris.
Versailles, I look forward for getting there. You know why? It's a hard way.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
She celebrated much like a full-fledged Olympic athlete. The marathon course will take her past majestic views of the Seine, but whether this will just remain a backdrop or the actual site of competition safe enough for athletes to swim now depends on the weather. There are 2 contingency days built into the program before the triathlon swim is canceled and the open swim moved. Officials will just keep on testing the water. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Paris.
French police are investigating death threats made against 3 Israeli athletes. The country's Olympic delegation says it's received multiple threatening emails. French police are also investigating a data breach where the athletes' personal information was released online. Israel had warned of potential threats from Iran-backed groups against its athletes and tourists during the Games. Israeli Olympians are getting round-the-clock personal security in the athletes' village and while traveling to events. Anti-tourism protests are sweeping across Europe this summer. People who live in some regions popular with visitors are telling them to go home. It's meant to draw the attention of politicians to help focus on the cost of living for those who stay in the cities year-round. CTV's Christina Tanalia reports.
Chanting on the streets of Barcelona. It's July, summer's busy travel season. But this isn't a welcoming committee. They're local protesters shouting, demanding tourists go home. 1.6 million people call Barcelona home. Last year, 26 million visitors stopped by.
The last years, the city has turned completely for tourists, and what we want is a city for citizens.
Forget the seaside. Some recent vacationers were squirted. On the Spanish island of Mallorca and Greece's Santorini, shared frustrations. Locals say they can't afford to rent or own a home because travelers are spending and scooping up accommodations. Mass tourism makes us poorer and more dependent, this woman says, impacting the price of housing. In June, Barcelona's mayor announced a ban on vacation rentals by 2028. His deputy says that will free up thousands of units. We have 10,000 homes that when they were built for residential use, and today they are responding to the demands of visitors. City officials report the cost of rent rose by 68% in the last decade. The price to buy a home rose by 38%. In Mallorca, some residents now live in camper vans. We don't know how to describe it, that we who are from this island must be living this way.
They are anti-over-tourism. They are anti-too much of a good thing, which is turning out to be a bad thing for them.
This professor says it's time for crowd control.
They are against the fact that tourism is not properly managed, not properly controlled. Destinations have to really pay attention to establishing quotas.
That would include limiting Airbnb options and putting a cap on the daily arrival of cruise ships.
It's really a matter of finding the right balance.
Finding the right balance may be the solution, but for now, desperate locals would rather send sunseekers packing. Christina Tanalia, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up, pulling the plug on electric vehicles.
It's the type of thing that could continue to cost taxpayers for decades to come.
Canada's EV investments, is it worth the cost? Plus, strumming again after surviving at sea. As Canada races to become a leader in the electric vehicle supply chain, some companies are taking their foot off the gas. Ford and General Motors are building fewer electric vehicles, while this week construction was suspended at a battery component plant in Ontario. It has some asking if Canada's EV investments are worth the cost. CTV's Colton Prale reports.
Celebrated 2 years ago, now construction on Umicore's $2.7 billion battery component plant near Kingston, Ontario is indefinitely delayed. It happened just a week after this Oakville Ford plant announced electric vehicle production would be delayed 2 years, while it focused on making new models of the gas-powered F-Series pickup truck, despite receiving nearly $600 million in government subsidies to better produce electric vehicles.
We had to spend the money. I believe we spent it too early because the reality is 90% of the auto industry is still internal combustion engine.
High costs and lackluster infrastructure mean globally EV sales are slowing, production is dropping, while Canada pours billions into efforts to become an EV supply chain leader. Since 2020, the country has brought in more than $46 billion in investments across the EV supply chain, but it's costing even more. Over $52 billion in supports from Ottawa and the provinces. Some say the government needs to scale back on EV investments.
If you double down, it's the type of thing that could continue to cost taxpayers for decades to come.
Ottawa is standing by its investments, saying these delays are common as the industry focuses on long-term success. Automakers argue they were needed to prepare Canada's economy for the future, even if demand has yet to meet expectations.
I don't think we need to be wringing our hands that somehow we've made an error here in terms of banking on electrification.
Experts say there is a silver lining. The longer companies delay production, the less time they'll have to access government subsidies. It means Canada's EV supply chain could be cheaper for taxpayers, but only if it comes online later than expected. Heather.
Colton, thanks. And some Canadian taxpayers will have their say in an upcoming by-election. More on that still ahead. Plus, a Swiftie sing-along. Thousands of Taylor Swift fans claim a high perch to watch a concert for free. Some voters in Montreal and Winnipeg will head to the polls next month in 2 federal by-elections. The Prime Minister made it official today, announcing the date of September 16th. CTV's Jeremy Sharon reports these races come with significant pressure following an historic Liberal loss in Toronto not long ago.
The date is now set, and when voters head to the polls in Winnipeg and Montreal in September, Canadians across the country will be watching closely.
The Liberals keep running in the same direction, expecting that they're going to reach a pleasant destination. So far, there's been nothing there for them except hardship and pain.
2 races that may not typically be of great interest, but they come in the form of the first test for the Liberals since a stunning upset in Toronto's St. Paul's in June, losing a decades-long Liberal stronghold to the Conservatives.
They have done nothing to suggest they think they need to change since the last by-election. And that's a crisis for them, because clearly the message of Toronto St. Paul's is that Canadians and voters are unhappy.
The race in Montreal is of particular interest. The riding of La Salle-et-Mort-Verdun, a seat previously held by former Justice Minister David Lametti, has been without representation since January when he resigned, yet again seen as a Liberal stronghold.
The reason we're all watching this one is half the cabinet borders that riding. If they can lose La Salle-et-Mort-Verdun, they're facing an extinction level event.
And polling has already shown it's likely to be a 3-way race between the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP.
I think that this is a by-election where people will be taking, I think, a fresher look at all the parties.
In Winnipeg, it's a race to replace NDP MP Daniel Blakey in Elmwood, Transcona, who resigned to work with Premier Wamp Canoe, a seat that has often been held by the New Democrats.
I've never believed actually that there's any such thing as a safe seat. So I think that in seats that you traditionally hold, you have to really fight hard.
2 summer by-elections that are likely to serve as a bellwether
for what's to come. Heather?
All right, Jeremy, thanks. And a massive summer turnout for Swifties who got creative for free seats this weekend at a concert in Munich. Around 40,000 Taylor Swift fans swarmed a hill near the concert venue, claiming a high perch to watch the superstar's sold-out show. Instead of kicking them out, concert organizers handed out water bottles and emergency blankets. And fans were back outside today for the last performance of her Eras tour in Germany. We have more music after the break from the East Coast.
There's no other life for a sailor like me, but to sail the salt sea, boy, sail the sea.
Striking a chord to sing a tale of the sea. We leave you tonight with an incredible survival story, and it's bound to strike a chord. One fisherman of a crew now called the Lucky Seven is strumming again with a new guitar in hand and a maritime tale to go with it. CTV's Garrett Berry explains.
No other life for a sailor like me, but to sail the salt.
A gift from Premier Andrew Furey to fisherman David Tiller. But to break it in, he called on one of Canada's most recognizable voices, Alan Doyle.
But the middle of nowhere's where I likes it best.
What a week it's been. Tiller's now known as one of Newfoundland and Labrador's Lucky Seven. Fishermen who beat the odds, survived 50 hours on a life raft in the harsh North Atlantic, and somehow made it home.
When my daughter she met me on the pier and she was crying and breaking her heart, and I said, Katie, I said, Dad is home for good.
His boat, the Elite Navigator, caught fire last Wednesday. The Seven crew had just a few minutes to evacuate. In the 2 days of searching that followed, many in this province held their breath. Because here, the sea gives and it takes. Not this time. Rescuers outlasted the fog and found them. And the last flare they fired off. In the town of New West Valley, they celebrated. Some of Tiller's crewmates are anxious to get back on the water, but he's not. He says he may never go that far offshore again.
When it comes to turbot, I just got too big of a fright. I can't put myself through it anymore. And I have 2 kids home.
Tiller lost his guitar when the Elite Navigator burned. Now he's got this replacement. It's what he asked for when government said they'd do anything they could to help.
Lucky Seven, we are home, boys, home.
Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
The Lucky Seven, such a remarkable story of survival. That is our newscast. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.